The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic conversation for you today. We're going to do things slightly different. While Webster is here, he's actually going to be a guest on today's show, and I'm going to run this one. So we'll see how that goes. Before we jump into it, let me just take a minute to remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and now Light Fair as well. As we've been telling you guys, Light Fair is back beginning of May. Make sure you guys are going to be there. And let's not forget, this episode is also presented by NAILD, or financially supported by NAILD, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. If you have not been to lightingcontrolspodcast.com yet, what are you guys waiting for? You can find everything there about us that you need. There's a news feed, merch store, and so much more, including training. And that is what this episode is going to be all about. We're going to talk about the brand new NAILD LSC training, and that is why Webster and our other guest, Michael Colligan, are here today to talk to you guys. So let's get into this conversation. We will kick things off with Michael, because some of you may not know who he is. So Michael, would you mind just giving us a quick rundown on who you are and what you do?
The apprentice has surpassed the master. What a great introduction, Ron. That was fantastic. Yeah, you know what? I'm one of the managers of NAILD. I'm the host of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Along with you guys, I was one of the creators of the Lighting Controls podcast that we started a couple years ago. And, Webster, we were having a meeting. I can't remember when it was, not quite a while ago. And Webster floated the idea of a lighting controls certification. And I said, hey, I think we might be able to pull this off if, we get NAILD involved and see if they're interested. And so I went to the NAILD board and asked for some money, and they gave us some money. And so Webster and I have been pulling this thing off on a shoestring budget ever since. And it's been fun, and it's been exciting, and it's scary. It's a little bit scary, actually. We're good. There's a lot of people helping us. And so there are ups and downs with this, but I've really enjoyed working very closely with Webster and also Scott Wachter as well. Webster's done a lot of work in this regard as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. So, all right, Webster, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the LSC, what it truly is, and when it's happening? Let's get down to some of the nitty gritty. We've spent so much time talking about it in previous episodes. We've touched on the certification. Let's actually really get into it.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely advertised it, but as far as what it is, where it is, so it is the Lighting Specialist in Controls. That's what LS-C stands for. And there's actually going to be 3 different tracks that you can pick from. There's going to be a specialist track, which is kind of like a design-focused, learn how to do design work of lighting controls. Then there's a distribution track focused on the sales and distribution of lighting controls. And then there's an installation track, which is going to focus on how to install the lighting control systems. You can only take one track, but we are going to work on creating an accelerated version of this for people who have gone through this and passed, which is we're going to have a proctored exam at the end. If you pass the exam, you can take the accelerated course and learn one of the other tracks or both of the other tracks. We're working on that, but first we're working on this initial push to get this done. But anyway, so it is the very first date of this is going to be May 13th. This is going to be an online webinar, mandatory for all attendees. This is going to be a 2-hour webinar, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. The next date is going to be May 20th. Same thing, online webinar, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. May 27th, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So there's going to be 3 2-hour webinars in May leading up to an in-person training that's going to be in Dallas, Fort Worth area at the Dallas Market Center starting June 16th. June 16th at 8:30 a.m. You're going to show up, you're going to bring a laptop with you, and you're going to learn one of the 3 tracks from one of our 3 instructors. I am one of them doing the specialist track. We also have excellent instructor for the installation track and the distribution tracks. So you will definitely learn from veterans in the industry who know what they're doing, have been here before. And so that's the first in-person day. Second in-person day is going to be June 17th. So back to back, 8:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. It's going to be a long day. The reason why is because we want to make sure that this is really thorough so that you can start from nothing with lighting controls knowledge and get to a point where you can be confident about your understanding of lighting controls and at least provide for a narrow scope of lighting controls projects. We're not talking about enterprise level. We're talking about simple installation and programming so that those smaller jobs can at least have some oversight and support. The last date is going to follow, which is June 18th, and that's going to be the proctored exam. In the morning is going to be the first proctored exam. If you pass that, you don't need to stick around afterwards. But if you don't pass the first exam in the morning, you can take the second exam in the afternoon. If you do not pass the second exam, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to retake the entire course. But hopefully we're not going to have anybody do that because we've got great instructors, people ready to make sure that you know everything. If you're listening, paying attention, you should be able to pass these exams. And additionally, if you pass the exam, you will be able to go to NALMCO and get the Certified Lighting Controls Practitioner certification as well, because we're going to align the curriculum with that certifications requirements. And you also get a discount code. We're working with NALMCO right now on getting a discount code. So you know, there's a reason it's great. It's a good stepping stone to get to the next level of lighting controls. So again, if you know nothing about it, May 13th, 20th, 27th, those are the online dates. June 16th through 18th are the in-person dates. And you must, you're responsible for flight and hotel and all that. But these are the dates that are necessary. And you also need to have a Windows laptop. Sorry, Apple users. The software we're using just does not acknowledge Apple as an operating system. But at any rate, these are all the specific pieces of information. We do have a frequently asked questions online, and we're starting to open up registration now. We have an early bird special, $3.99 for members, $4.99 for non-members of NAILD. So get your early bird special discount now, and then you don't have to worry about it, and you can start looking at flights and hotel accommodations.
Awesome. That's a ton of information for everybody. So hopefully everyone got on that, but we'll definitely hit on that at the end. But they can find all that online as well, right? Which is
absolutely
important for everyone to realize. And the early board registration, is that live now or is that going live soon? It's live now.
Early bird registration is live as of the release of this episode.
Perfect.
While we're recording, we're not released yet, but when this does release, it will be out for people to take advantage of. We'll have a link in the description down below. But yeah, take advantage of it. We're only going to do it for a month. So get it now. And we're already getting, right now as we're recording, we're already seeing spots getting snatched up. So from our pre-registered group. So really, if you are interested in doing it, don't delay, don't wait. You got to jump on this. We're going to have a limited number of seats available for people. And I will say the specialist track is the one that's filling up the fastest. So if you really want to take the specialist track, jump on it now, because you're not gonna get a second chance.
Awesome. I do want to talk about those 3 tracks, but before we do that, let's go back over to Michael. Michael, this is obviously the Lighting Controls podcast, and thank you so much for coming on. But we're always advocating for lighting controls, but you're coming from the NAILD side, from the distributor side. So tell us, why is this so important to NAILD to start to see this movement and create this certification for lighting controls?
That's a good question. I think I need to take the course, but but I had talked before with you guys, and I don't know if your audience is aware of Michael Colligan's lighting controls boom bust cycle. So we've had these cycles in the past where new technology has led to the development of lighting controls technologies that just didn't have what it took to, these are older, the Cat 5 stuff, and then some of the low voltage relays and all these things that came out in the late 90s and then around 2010. And they just never got their hooks into the industry. But there's something about this digital ability to speak to the controls from that you don't have to push buttons where they blink back at you, and commission them that way, where you can actually have a user interface on a tablet or a computer or a phone where you can address each control individually. And the also the lower cost. There seems to be everything else that's digital in the digital age. As this advances, the cost seems to come down, and it seems to be starting to embed itself in everything lighting. So the more I review the product lines of my suppliers, the more I see lighting controls embedded into every single fixture that they have on their line card. And so I think if you're like me and you hate digital lighting controls, too bad for you. You may want to get an employee or two tuned up by sending them to the Dallas Market Center between the 16th and the 18th, so that they can come to understand this. And the other thing that I would add to that, even if you're not big on selling it, you should probably know a lot about it so you can talk about it more. So right now, if you're a distributor and you're listening to Lighting Controls podcast, because for whatever reason you're picking this up, and you have guys at the counter and they all eschew lighting controls because that's what everyone did in the lighting industry in the past. Forget about lighting controls, just a hassle. Well, guess what? They're in the fixtures now. They come with controls in them. Whereas in the past, you had to order an aux sensor on the end of the fixture, and then you had to go and press the button on it and ding, 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 ding to make it work. So I just think the user friendliness of it, the embedding of the technology, and then finally, of course, the rebate programs. So those three things are going to drive distributors. And you mentioned NAMCO contractors. Distributors and contractors have a lot in common with one another. A lot of contractors have warehouses. A lot of distributors have contractors that work for them or have contractors that are employed by them, electricians. And so you have, this one I think is going to fly. I don't think it's going to be an explosion like the LED boom was. I think it's going to be a slow and steady increase. And, maybe not like, LEDs going growth is enormous, but it's going to be a consistent, solid development. And especially if you have someone like Webster, Marsh, who's putting together controls training like this is a huge service to this industry, Webster. So my hat's off to you for your ideas and your hard work. So I think distributors should be interested in this. Most of them already are. I think contractors are in the same boat. They're like lighting contractors, not necessarily electricians, but lighting contractors. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Webster's idea is both timely and it's also needed. So those two things together are very powerful forces. So I think it's going to be growth there, and that's why I'm interested in sending my employees. I'm even considering going myself. So there you go.
That's awesome. That would be amazing to see you sitting through one of these trainings.
I don't know if I can do it, but I might. I
might
go to the bar. I might go to the bar instead.
We'll just make sure we put a bar in the back of the class.
Sure.
It'll be fine. It'll
Yeah.
be perfect.
Yeah.
No, I think it's fantastic. And like you mentioned, this is definitely, while NAILD is obviously very focused on the distributor side of things, this is a training for the entire industry. This is not just for distributors. This is not specific to just distributors. And I think that's important, that anyone who is listening to this, who's interested in learning more about controls and potentially these three tracks, this is open to anyone. So, we've talked a lot about needing more boots on the ground, needing more people in the controls industry, needing more educated personnel, not, from selling it up front, understanding how to put a system together, being able to program it and get it started up, from start to end, needing more people in the industry that understand controls. And that's part of the reason that you chose to break this up into 3 different tracks to make it a little easier for people. It's a lot to digest.
Absolutely.
All at once. So Webster, why don't you tell us a little bit more about sort of the 3 tracks and how those 3 tracks operate and what people can expect?
Yeah, even before that, I just want to say, like, the virtual webinars, the reason why we're going to require everybody to attend and not just specific tracks is because we want to start with a baseline. Everybody needs to agree that this definition is the same through and through. And so we're aligning the curriculums through all 3 tracks so that it's not like you take one and you've learned a different definition of 0 to 10 volt. But that's why we do the webinars up front. Then in the in-person, the 3 tracks really there is a huge difference between the roles that we have in this industry. And there are definitely plenty of other roles out there. I would say the majority of roles that don't necessarily immediately fall into one of these three buckets, I would say, are specialists. And so, maybe one day we'll have a training for those kinds of specialists. But right now we're starting at the very basic level, which is you're either a designer specifier, somebody who picks what products go into a project, or at least the design guidance, creating a control intent narrative, talking to the ownership, and making sure that they have sort of an expectation for what their goals are for the project. As a specialist, you would create the documentation that then gets handed over to the next role in our industry, which is sales, specifically distribution in this case. But you absolutely have to have a salesperson, a distributor, whatever, to get the product. You can't just go to Home Depot and pick it off the shelves. A lot of this product is only available through distribution. And so as a result, your documents get brought over to a distributor. The distributor does what's called a takeoff. They look at the drawings and assess how many of what they need, create a bill of materials and a quote. And that way, that quote goes back to the owner and says, okay, this is how much it's going to cost based on what the designer put together. Ideally, the designer should at least have a rough idea of what that price is going to be. And so the specialist is going to learn some information about sales, but is not going to get into the weeds the same way that a person taking the distribution track is going to learn. Distribution is going to learn how to read documentation from a specialist, but isn't going to learn necessarily how to put those documents together, how to talk to the owner and get that information that they need to make the design. They need to be able to read this documentation and start up the sale process. They need to understand what they should stock in inventory, what they don't need to stock in inventory and just order on special order. And what the typical most common products that they're going to see are. So that way they can predict sales lines, they can make sure things are done in a timely manner and also within cost. Then, you can't just sell it and then drop it off and walk away. You need somebody to actually take that product and put it in the wall or put it in the ceiling. So installation is the last step in this, which the salesperson makes sure that everything's delivered to the project in time and in budget. The installer is going to oversee everything. They're not actually probably going to put their hands on a lot of equipment. Their job in this particular training process is to oversee the installers, the contractors, to make sure that they understand the systems. If the contractor is super savvy, the installer might not need to do much at all. But we've seen time and again, and in conversations in this podcast, that it's when installation goes poorly that it goes really poorly. And so this gives a safeguard to this whole process. And so it's an ecosystem. A project starts with a specialist. The specialist hands the project over to the the distributor. The distributor hands it over to the installer, and the installer makes sure that the landing is stuck. And so as a result, we can kind of make sure that if you have all three of these roles involved in the project, that the project is going to go a lot better than projects you've had in the past, maybe, or projects you've heard about when it comes to lighting controls. I mean, we've all heard horror stories when it comes to lighting controls. And that's what we're trying to avoid here with this certification. And the reason we're focusing around the distribution channel is because distributors really have a great opportunity to take advantage of projects that don't have a lot of design work or people involved. Those projects that are a 10,000 square foot office that an architect or an engineer might not even see. They're just replacing lighting fixtures, but they need controls to take advantage of the rebates. Well, okay. We've got a specialist in-house, we've got a distributor in-house, and we've got an installer in-house. Let's put together a bill of material that includes the services of all three. And if that gets approved, great. Then we're going to do this project and make sure that it's done appropriately. And that way, you really add a lot of service and a lot of value to the products you're providing. You're no longer just drop shipping equipment to a site. You're making sure that at the end of the day, the owner and the occupants are going to be happy with what they have for lighting controls. And that is really the component that we miss a lot with lighting controls, is that we just assume. We go, okay, yeah, we need a switch, we need sensors, we're good. Okay, great, let's move on. But there's not a lot of oversight in that situation. In the specification world, where we have designers and other specialists involved in these, 100,000 square foot projects that are over multi-million dollars just for the lighting and lighting controls alone, okay, that is a whole different scenario. And that's the other thing that we're going to train in here, is when to identify when you are about to bite off way more than you can chew, and reach out for help. And who do you reach out for help when that happens? You still can be the distributor involved in the project. There's nothing wrong with that, but you absolutely should be reaching out for help when you reach that line.
Okay, so this training is not necessarily going to be manufacturer specific, but there are manufacturers who are participating in this training. So let's talk a little bit about those manufacturers and the benefits that the attendees will get from that training, and what, if any, sort of certifications and stuff they will get from these manufacturers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I knew from the beginning that if we did not have partners with brands of any kind, this goal wouldn't really take off, because it is the manufacturers that are providing 90% of the educational materials in our industry right now. And they know their products through and through, and they want to make sure that their products are done correctly. So we looked for manufacturing brands that wanted to get involved in this and would endorse this. So it's not just that they give us a thumbs up, they are actually supportive and wanting this to succeed, and they will support anybody who takes the training, so that you get an LSCI installation. You will be an endorsed installer of the brands. And so the brands that we have MW Connect, we have Toggled, we have Rab, and we have MaxLight. Now, that's only 4, but when it comes to distribution, some distributors only have one brand that they go to.
Right.
And the reason why it was really important for me to not just do one brand is because there's no silver bullet out there. No one product, no one brand is good enough for every single project out there. So we found brands that complemented each other and covered a lot of different territory when it comes to scope and project type. So that way we could really make sure that when people are trained on these products, which we're going to do hands-on training for each of these brands, with non-brand training supplementing that education, so that it's not just going to be specific to these brands. You can diversify. I had a conversation recently with somebody interested in this course, and he asked me, well, we do a lot of Lutron distribution. Is this going to be applicable? And I said, people who attend this will be able to take the fundamentals of this information and apply it to the majority of lighting control systems that are out there. So that way it's a starting baseline. But the problem is, in North America, everything's proprietary. So do you need to learn a little bit more once you take this certification to be able to expand to another system? Absolutely. But you're always going to need to do that, regardless of what it is that you study. If you're a salesperson for a single lighting controls brand, you're going to have to do a huge amount of study to figure out another system anyways. And so we're giving you actually a really good leg up by giving you 4 different brands to pick from. And it's not going to be apples to apples, it's apples to oranges. These brands don't compete necessarily for the exact same scope. And so that way you can kind of go, okay, this kind of project is a better Rab project, or this project is a better MW Connect project, which is the better way to do lighting controls anyways, because once you start doing single brand only focused lighting controls, you're basically a hammer in search of a nail. You do not see projects in a way of what does the owner want and need. It's how do I fit this into this project? And so that's what I'm trying to also help people understand, is that is not a good way to do lighting controls. That is a bad way to do lighting controls. So if you can really make sure that you are catering to the ownership's needs and providing a quality service as well as product, you're going to do so much better, and you're going to have repeat customers as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, so I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about, obviously, people get very focused on the large projects, and that's not what we're really looking at here. There is going to be so much demand in the coming years with the changing regulations and the incentives from utilities for lighting controls in those 50,000 square foot and under projects that don't have anything now, right? Where the distributors live, where the ESCOs live, where people can really make a difference and dive into these projects. So knowing that all that's out there and it's coming, Michael, Webster spent a lot of time explaining everything to us and going through all the detail. But let's talk about the really important thing for everyone listening who's still on the fence. Why is this so important? Why should they be there to attend these trainings? What's the big that they're going to get out of this?
Whew. You know that, you know that, that the old adage where you put in, you get out what you put in to something. I remember I was in Air Cadets, and when I joined Air Cadets when I was in grade 7, I loved Air Cadets. I got my pilot's license, everything. I had such a wonderful time. And they said to me, you get in what you get in, you get out of Air Cadets what you put into it. And I think with this lighting controls, a lot of distributors contract the people we've identified, that we've identified in these tracks. The manufacturers are all in. They're there.
Yep.
Okay, these people, they want their control systems to be used. The rebate programs, the utilities, they want these control systems to be used. Okay, but what we see out there is like people will get a rebate for an uncommissioned control system just because it was sold to somebody. This kind of stuff really bothers me. The ratepayers of a utility should, if they're going to pay a rebate, because the rebates come from the people that pay for the electricity. If they're going to pay this money, the industry has an obligation to deliver the value that we have been paid and our industry has been subsidized to give. And so there's that point of it where, right now we got one toe in. Distributors, the contractors, the designers and such. We got one toe in the water. Okay, I'll specify these controls and we'll get the rebate. I think we need to think more. I think we need to think bigger and better about that. We need to serve our customers better. And when we serve our customers better, when we have knowledge about what we are doing, when our employees know what the heck they're talking about, maybe they know more than Colligan, that's okay. When they know what they're talking about, they know what they're doing, and they've been trained on something, they're confident now. Okay, I got this background training on controls. I understand how this ecosystem works. And now I'm actually I'm not a full-blown expert, but I would say that, I'm pretty darn good with this, RAB system. Or I can't remember, sorry, RAB, I can't remember. Is it Cloud Connect? What's RAB's called? Light Cloud, sorry. And I'm, great with CMAX, with MaxLight. And I already have accounts with these people and they have resources there. And now I can serve my customers properly. I can even tell them when they shouldn't have controls. The second point that you guys have brought up on this show is that, you don't have to know everything. When you're a distributor, there's certain things that you should know about lighting controls if you're selling this equipment. When people are calling you on the phone, they're talking to you about it or whatever. And if you're installing, you don't want to be learning on the job, right? Like that's always dangerous, especially with this kind of equipment. And then if you're specifying or if you're a designer, you don't want to be like, okay, they want lighting controls. What do I do? Okay, yeah, sure. I know how to do lighting. Sure. Like, I don't like that kind of behavior, but it's very common in our industry. Okay. And so those things are, very important. The final point I'll make on this is that I've said this a lot on Get a Grip on Lighting. All the buildings we have are already built.
Yep.
Okay. And there is so much focus on new construction. But guess what? New construction is 0% of the energy consumption. New construction does not exist right now, right? So most of the buildings we have are already built. Actually, all of the buildings we have are already built. And almost none of these have lighting controls. And if they do, they're probably like, a giant mall or something like that. So there is tons of runway, like you were saying, for people to have an impact in on their customer base, their existing customer base. A distributor doesn't have to go out and look for new business. This is just something you're adding to your existing customers that already buy from you. And you're going to be able to talk them in or out of a lighting control system based on, you know what, I really think CMAX is a better fit, or Cloud Connect, or whatever MW Connect. You know, I really learned this other one. This one's actually a better fit. Now you're having intelligent conversations in the same way you have intelligent conversations about lighting equipment with people, except that this is lighting controls equipment, which is really now lighting equipment. So if you're in this space, the buildings are already built, none of them have lighting controls, and the rebate programs are going to be based on lighting controls, and you want to be able to serve your clients with intelligent people that are answering phones and answering questions within the tracks that their job demands. So if you're being asked to specify lighting controls, you change it from design. It's called the specialist track now, Webster?
Yes. Well, so I refer to it as the design track so people understand that that's what it's focused on, but it's this, we're calling it the specialist track.
Right. So if you're doing that, then you want to take the design track. If you're more along the lines of an outside salesperson that's managing accounts, you want to take that distribution track. If you're an electrician or a lighting contractor of some kind, you want to take the installation track. And so that you're trained and you know what you're doing in this particular space. And so that's why I'm very happy to be part of this. And I'm glad NAILD took this up with Webster and Scott Wachter, and we're going to put it together. And I think it's going to be spectacular and amazing, Ron. I'm telling you truly.
Yeah, it is going to be amazing. So, all right, I will try and summarize some of this. I know you make a great point, though, in the fact that you don't have to go out and look for new customers. They're already there. This is truly about additional revenue dollars in front of you and making sure that you and your team are comfortable to position yourselves to, do well with these projects, be able to sell them, be able to start them up, go through the whole process. And like you said, with luminaire level lighting controls are in the fixtures. They are one and the same now. So you have to have at least a basic understanding because it's now part of your fixture. It's part of your sale already anyway. So you just need to really adopt it and dive in. And the distributors who do really dive in are going to be the ones who make the most headway right off the bat. So, all right, let's see how well I was listening and paying attention to all of this. So we've got our 3 tracks. We've been over those pretty well. Our specialist / design, our distribution track, and our installation track. I think Michael did a great job about summarizing really who should be in those 3 different tracks. We've got 3 webinars, May 13, May 20, and May 27. And all 3 webinars are mandatory as part of the class, regardless of which track you're in, so that you have a base understanding before you get to the Dallas Market Center in June 16th and June 17th for the in-person training, with the test following those 2 days of in-person training. And then the early bird special, $3.99, going live as this episode releases, $4.99 for non-members. And that pretty much covers the most of it, right? What did I miss?
I think we should raise the price.
Yes, laptop and Windows-based laptop,
Yes.
right? That's it. Unfortunately, for everyone out there who's a Mac user, far too many of these lighting controls programs across the board are Windows-based. That is just a fact of life for what we deal with. What else you got?
I think you covered it.
I think you did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking your time to come on the show today. Thank you for allowing me to play host and let Webster sort of take a back seat on this one. Michael, thank you so much for coming. Anyone who is not familiar with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, make sure you check out Michael and Greg. Fantastic what they do. They brought us in. We have a great time together. So really, thank you guys so much. I will close us out. Remind everyone, today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and Light Fair. Do not forget, beginning of May. While this is more important than that, you do still want to be at Light Fair, because be there, or B square.
Yeah,
And
baby.
don't forget, this episode is financially supported by NAILD, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Go to the lightingcontrolspodcast.com to see all of our newsfeed, merch store, and to find more information on this exact certification. And if you cannot find it there, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out. Michael, Webster, thank you guys so much. This was a fantastic conversation.